Just after the funeral of my mother-in-law, whom I loved like my own mother, a letter arrived from her. A lawyer delivered it to our house. I am Sharon, 43 years old. The letter began. If this letter has reached you, it means I am no longer in this world. I'm worried you might be crying. Seeing her familiar handwriting, my eyes welled up. My father-in-law had passed away at a young age, long before my husband and I got married, and there were no close relatives on his side of the family, with almost no family interaction. My husband and I, who had no children, lived modestly but happily with my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law and I got along so well that my husband would joke, "You two are like a real mother and daughter, and I'm the son-in-law." Last year, my husband passed away from cancer, leaving just my mother-in-law and me. Then she suddenly became a victim of a traffic accident. There were many mysterious aspects to the accident. For some reason, she was found collapsed on a road in a city where she had no known connections and was hit by a passing car. The police are investigating both the incident and the accident, but her bag hasn't been found. The police asked me various questions, but I didn't know much and couldn't respond properly due to the shock. I couldn't sort out my feelings about my sudden parting with my mother-in-law. In my husband's case, we had a year of medical treatment, and my mother-in-law was there, so we could remember him fully. We promised to overcome our grief together and continue living in harmony. While there were things to take care of, like the funeral and administrative procedures, my mind was distracted. But once everything was over, I suddenly felt lonely. My own parents had already passed away due to cancer. I have a brother, but he lives far away in the countryside with his family. Even if I wanted to talk to my old friends from my student days, it's difficult because they are all in the midst of raising children. Then a man claiming to be a lawyer called me. Judging from his voice, he was probably in his 70s, around the same age as my mother-in-law. He apologized for being late to notice my mother-in-law's death and said there was something he wanted to give me as soon as possible. Is it a letter from my mother-in-law? I asked, puzzled. I had never heard of my mother-in-law being in contact with a lawyer, and the idea of receiving a letter from a deceased person seemed surreal. I was skeptical, thinking it might be a scam, but curiosity got the better of me. I decided to meet the lawyer, hoping the letter was truly from my mother-in-law. The letter continued. I know you're surprised by this sudden letter from me, but please listen. There is danger approaching you. Believe my words and run away immediately. I turned to the lawyer sitting in front of me. Excuse me, do you know the content of this letter? Was my mother-in-law targeted by someone? Indeed, the handwriting was unmistakably my mother-in-law's, characterized by her unique quirks. I recognized it instantly, but the content made no sense. It felt like a plot from a poorly crafted thriller. My mother-in-law had died in a car accident, and the driver had already been apprehended. He testified that he found her lying in the road, which delayed her discovery. The signs suggested she might have been hit and lost consciousness. If the letter was true, she must have had suspicions about her attacker. Did she foresee this incident? If so, why didn't she escape? Tears welled up in my eyes again. The lawyer, calm and composed, said, I haven't read the contents, but I believe I could guess what it's about. Somewhat frustrated by his vague response, I pressed, so what did you hear from my mother-in-law? Well, I was the one who represented Oliver at that time and have been asked to help you, he replied. Who's Oliver? The lawyer explained that my husband had an older brother, 6 years his senior. I was stunned. Neither my mother-in-law nor my husband had ever mentioned him, nor had I seen any photos. The lawyer pulled out a file from a bag beside the table. Sharon, do you know that half of the serious crimes in our country happen within families? He said, a hint of irony in his voice. Tragically, the place where we should feel safest, the family home, is often where these heartbreaking incidents occur. He then showed me an old photo featuring 4 people, a young man and woman who looked like parents, a boy, and a baby. The young woman was familiar. It was my mother-in-law. At first, I thought the young man was a stranger, but he resembled my husband. The boy also bore a resemblance to the young man, suggesting a father-son relationship. The photo seemed to be taken during a trip to the beach, with the family posing in front of a large ship at the port, all with happy smiles on their faces. The boy with the float, that's Oliver, the lawyer told me. I stared at the boy, my husband's brother, whom I knew nothing about. The photo depicted such a happy moment, and I felt a sharp pain in my chest, wondering what could have possibly happened to this family. Does being a lawyer mean Oliver caused some incident? Was he the one who assaulted my mother-in-law this time? It must have been more than 17 or 18 years ago, considering my husband and I dating 15 years prior to our marriage. Otherwise, it would be strange for me to have known nothing about this. Yes, Oliver became a recluse from the summer of his first year in junior high due to bullying. and 7 years later he caused an incident, the lawyer explained. In despair about his future, Oliver attempted to commit family suicide. Late at night, he entered his parents' room with a knife, struggling with his father who woke up due to the noise. Despite being severely injured, his father subdued Oliver, and the incident ended in an attempted crime. Upon hearing his mother scream during the struggle, your husband, who was 14 at the time, called the police. Police cars and ambulances rushed to the scene, causing a brief stir in the usually quiet residential area. At the time, societal issues like recluses and NEETs were becoming common, and the media sensationally reported on such stories. I remember hearing news like this but never connected it to your husband's family. Similar stories were often in the media. However, it was different for those involved. Unable to withstand the rumors, the family moved house several times, almost like fleeing in the night, whether it was due to the severe injuries or the subsequent stress. Your father-in-law passed away a few years later. Your mother-in-law and husband changed their names back to her maiden name, finally able to lead a normal life in their current place. Both the perpetrator and the victim are family, so there's no outlet for emotions in such incidents. You can't fully hate or detest any person. Anyone would be confused if suddenly put in such a complicated situation. Living under the public eye, rumors, and bashing is very hard. I hope you can empathize with the feelings of the deceased who couldn't talk to you. Sharon. The lawyer summarized, his voice tinged with sympathy. I was at a loss for words due to the harshness of it all. I had never considered what happened to the family after such an incident. But as long as they were alive, life went on. The in-laws must have seen the boy Oliver as their adorable child. The photo of Oliver that I was shown had a smile that greatly resembled my husband's, but the mistake of a single button could never be fixed, leading to the worst tragedy. Later, Oliver was sentenced to actual imprisonment and served time. When the lawyer started explaining at length, I represented Oliver. Remember? The same punishment applies even for an attempt, life imprisonment or at least 5 to 20 years in prison. I interrupted him, asking, a minimum of 5 years? Are you saying Oliver could be out already? Yes. He was actually released about 2 years ago, the lawyer replied. According to the lawyer, the prosecutor's office has a victim notification system. After a verdict is confirmed, you can apply to the prosecutor's office to be notified about the planned release date of the offender or even after they have been released. Even without that, my mother-in-law, being Oliver's biological mother, had been notified of his residence after his release. Around that time, my husband had been diagnosed with cancer and was undergoing treatment. Not wanting to worry him, my mother-in-law kept this information to herself. Oliver told me at the time that he committed the crime because he was pessimistic about his future. The lawyer continued. With some hesitation, he added, it seems he wanted money to spend. Oliver, who had been a shut-in for many years, had started to secretly use his mother's credit card to pay for online games and shopping. He had been scolded by his father for it. Apparently, he had used a lot of money to buy weapons for a game on the evening of the crime and had his computer taken away. Oliver lied to the lawyer, and his real father, mother, and brother, who knew the truth, said nothing. While they hoped Oliver would genuinely reflect on his actions and serve his punishment, they did not reveal the inside story of the post-release defamation and slander. Was this out of familial love? Truth be told, my mother-in-law often visited Oliver, my brother-in-law, while he was serving time in prison. Each time she went, she returned disappointed by Oliver's unchanging, unrepentant demeanor. She was afraid to live with Oliver again after his release. The danger of violence was part of the fear, but she knew that if she or her son died, Oliver would come to me asking for money. As his release date approached, there was an increase in tedious paperwork. She had to decide where to house him. Distressed, my mother-in-law decided to consult the lawyer who knew about the case and asked him to handle the procedures. What was Oliver doing for a living 2 years ago? I asked. It turned out that through the lawyer, she had been helping Oliver by renting an apartment for him. She would do his shopping and give him money from her savings, including her own retirement funds and the inheritance she would receive if her son, her own child, died. After his release, Oliver became a shut-in again and did not work. Money is limited, and through the lawyer, my mother-in-law conveyed, I can't support you forever, you need to start working on your own, but Oliver flatly refused. Doesn't my mother love me? She's always favoring my brother. She won't give me money because my brother told her not to. He made a big fuss, the lawyer said. Although it may have been an accident, the deceased was worried that Oliver might cause some trouble. He kept insisting that I give him money. Oliver became aggressive towards the lawyer as well and seemed to be asking in detail about my mother-in-law's income and the current life of his father and brother. Fortunately, I don't think he knows our address. but I'm worried that his apartment is near where the deceased died. At that moment, I remembered that the bag was not found. Then the doorbell rang. The only expected visitor was the lawyer. "Excuse me for a moment," I said and headed to the entrance. I had a bad feeling. When I checked through the peephole, there was a man standing who looked a lot like my husband. He was holding the bag that my mother-in-law used to carry. Quietly, I retreated to the living room and called the lawyer. "I think it might be Oliver. What should we do? He has my mother-in-law's bag." My voice shook with tension, and the lawyer's face stiffened. "Call the police right now." I might have intended to call the police, but I was too upset. Instead, I ran out the back door to the nearby police station. Did my mother-in-law and husband foresee this situation and choose a house near the police station, or was it just a coincidence? I don't know anymore. When I returned with the police officers, Oliver immediately tried to run away but was caught. As I suspected, the man who looked like my husband was Oliver, in other words, my brother-in-law. The lawyer called him Oliver, which was probably his name at the time, and I had been calling him Oliver because I had seen a family photo from when he was a small boy with a hint of innocence, but in reality, he was an unhealthy-looking middle-aged man. It strangely angered me that he looked like my husband. This man had been tormenting my mother-in-law and husband. "I'm just here to collect my share, your mom's inheritance. It exists, right? Even my younger brother died last year. Hand over my inheritance," Oliver yelled at me, ignoring the police officer's questions. What nerve does he have? I was furious. I sympathized with his childhood, being teased to the point of not going to school, but his actions thereafter were selfish and unforgivable. More than anything, I wanted to ask, "Isn't that your mother's bag you're holding? What did you do to her? Did you lay hands on a frail woman?" Upon hearing my words, the officers also looked at the bag that Oliver was holding. Flustered, Oliver tried to hide it, but it was too late. As one officer reached out his hand, Oliver snarled, "Hey, this is my money. I can't help it." It was the last thing my mom said. I only hit her a few times to teach her a lesson for being cheeky. Oliver's thought process made me shudder. There was no sense in his words, and he showed no remorse. Moreover, "Hey, you were my brother's wife, weren't you? Neither my mom nor my brother are here anymore. You have an obligation to support me." Maybe my mother-in-law and husband hid Oliver's existence from me. Fearing this situation, they must have thought that if I didn't know, I could avoid getting involved. "No, Mrs. Sharon, you don't have that obligation," the lawyer interrupted, but I doubted that the law would work on Oliver. Oliver was ultimately an invincible man with nothing to lose. He doesn't understand common sense, nor does he seem to want to abide by the law. Maybe that's why my mother-in-law never wanted me to meet him. I can only imagine how difficult her life must have been. I hadn't finished reading the letter, but my mother-in-law left it to me, worrying about my safety. Her pain and sadness were heartbreaking. "Because of you, my mother-in-law and husband suffered so much. I will never forgive you. You will face the law." Indeed, the direct cause was being hit by a car. However, he left my unconscious mother-in-law on the road. He is not a person who should be left to roam the streets. I pledged to myself that I would do whatever it takes to send him back to prison. Watching me, the lawyer stood beside me and said, "I'll help you." Oliver was taken to the police station. The blood on my mother-in-law's bag and circumstantial evidence pointed to Oliver as the culprit, and he was sent back to prison. I returned home with the lawyer and read my mother-in-law's letter to the end. Her letter was filled with apologies to me and overflowing love, especially the end. "Life is still long. Please live a happier, freer life, Sharon." Upon seeing that, I couldn't stop my tears.